Yo, so today I'm going to be breaking down this like bouncy triplet hyperpop or virtual melody and then throwing some drums on it.
Pineapple!
Alright, so the sound I started out with is the rewind pluck from the Adapt Serum Bank. A very good pluck, just a go-to pluck for me. Alright, so here's the MIDI for this. Overall it looks fairly complex, but it's really kind of simple once you break it down. So for the chords, all of these are pretty much just triads with the middle note inverted, as you can see here and see here. And then this second chord is just one that I like to use a lot. The B, F sharp, and A. I don't really know if there's a technical term for it, but overall I just like the way that chord sounds and I use it a ton in my melodies. But after I had those chords laid out, I just kind of clicked in a top line, and again, I've said this before, but I don't really have a concrete method for like clicking stuff in. The only thing I could say is like humming it in your head. That sometimes helps, but overall it's just a lot of trial and error for things like this. Then I went ahead and moved on to these rolls, which is another thing kind of like the chord. I just like the way this combination of notes sound, the F sharp F to C sharp, or vice versa. Any combination of these three notes usually sounds pretty cool. They just really go together. And then I went ahead and duplicated that over, put it down 2 octaves, and then moved the C sharp down to G sharp, just because that flowed a little bit better in the melody, going from like G sharp to A sharp, and then like continuing the upswing, I guess, trying to make everything transition really nice. And then again with these two things, just kind of clicked it in by ear till I got something that sounded cool. But then yeah, that whole like this whole chord section is basically the whole melody. So I just went ahead and copied that over, but I wanted this chord to sound deeper but not change the bass note. So what I did is just took this A sharp and put it down an octave, as you can see here. Then everything else in the melody pretty much stays the same, except this roll is down an octave, and then I added this A sharp here to just transition it into these 2 little quick rolls to end off the pattern. Then for the last half, there really isn't that much variation again. All I did was duplicate the D sharp up an octave, and then this roll comes down an octave and then gets duplicated over twice. And then I did this nice little like mini-ish top line accent pattern here. Overall, it just makes the melody sound a little bit cooler. But then in this last section, again, there's really nothing. I just added a G sharp here for some reason, which I don't know why it's there. But yeah, pretty decent melody. And then here's what it sounds like. So yeah, definitely one of my better hyperpop melodies of like the past months or so, because I haven't really made that much in this time. But then for the mixing, I have halftime on it on 1 bar just for some spots in the arrangement that I wanted to feel a little bit slower. Magic Switch, which is a free chorus plugin, and then an EQ just to cut the lows, make room for the 808, and then Ozone Imager just to make it feel a little bit wider. And then for the next sound, I use this synth called Light from the Collide Serum Bank. Overall, it's a pretty solid sound, and I like the way it sounded, so I put it in the melody. And then here's the MIDI for it. It's the same as the other one, just completely the same, no changes at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and play this, but I'm going to have to play it in the playlist so the CPU doesn't go all crackly on me. Just a nice background sound to kind of fill up the spaces in the pluck pattern where there's really nothing hitting. And then for the next sound, which is a accent like pluck pattern, I guess, I used the luck pluck, and really I chose this pluck because it has a really nice delay on it, and I just thought that would sound nice with what I wanted to do with it. But then for the MIDI, it just copies that roll from the main melody that I think was here originally, but it just repeats that over and over and over again. And then in this part, it's just down an octave, and then the E gets put up an octave just so it transitions a little bit better to the higher octave. But again, not really much to explain. This is a very simple pattern. So here's what it sounds like. And then for the effects on that, I just have a ping pong delay turned down about halfway, magic switch again, a little bit of reverb, and then a imager just to make it feel a little bit wider. Then I went ahead and rendered that out. Originally, I wanted to reverse this, but I didn't end up doing it. And I ended up just doing kind of the same thing that I did in that piano video, using Finisher Micro on the Infinity preset, and then a love filter automation, just to kind of make it feel like have a lot of movement, I guess. Don't really know how to explain it. But overall, I tried to like match where it's like the highest as like when the chord changes. So you can see here it matches up pretty well. And I think I messed up a little bit because this is like off. This should be here, but still sounds cool. So here's what it sounds like. And then for the other effects besides Finisher Micro and the Love Filter is just Pancake on this preset, which I've been using a lot recently. I don't know, it's just kind of weird to have like a robotic pan instead of like smooth ear to ear. Sometimes it's like what you need, I guess. Alright, so those were kind of all the melodies that like make up the base of the pattern and like make it seem full and stuff. So now we can get into like the accent and lead patterns. So I started off with this string called Sauce Real Hard from Sunboy's Hypnosis Bank. This is oddly one of my favorite strings, even though it's in Serum and not something like BBC Orchestra or Omnisphere or something. It's just a great string sound. And it just plays this pattern, which just copies the first and the third chord, I believe. And then that just repeats, so those chords are accented a little bit with these low notes. And then overall, again, just kind of click things in till I found something that I liked. Just a lot of trial and error and all that kind of stuff. But then in the second half, instead of it just being like 3 high notes here, then I just made it sweep up pretty decently high and then come back down just to make it a tad more interesting. So here's what this pattern sounds like. It's just a very simple, nice, like top line accent pattern. And then for the effects on that, I just have kind of like a low cut and a boost on the highs, just to kind of take out some of the low end from those low notes that accent the chords, and then give it a little bit more high end. All right, and then the next sound that's kind of like a partner to that string. I don't know, whenever I use that string in particular, I always partner it with the Cathedral Bellscape from Omnisphere. When I use this, I turn off the B section, just keep the A section on. It just cleans it up a little bit, makes the sound a little bit better in my opinion. But I don't know, something about strings and like church bells combined just sounds really good to me. And then here's the MIDI for it. Overall, very simple. Again, I need to figure out a way to explain these, like how I do them. I'll like think about it more when I make them, I guess. But just kind of click this in by ear till I got something that I liked. So here's what this sounds like. Just overall a pretty decent sound and a decent MIDI. Not really much like to like explain, I guess. I don't really know. But for the mixing, I just have this EQ that I always use with this church bell. Just makes it sound a little bit better and gets rid of some of those like super ringing high-end noises. And then for the first lead sound in the melody, I use this lead called Alter from the Sinju Serum Bank Volume 2. This is really a bank that I have to like actually use a bunch because the sounds are very unique and sound really good. And then here's the MIDI for that. Overall, just copies some of the little accent notes in that last chord. And then I switch it up in this one so it goes up instead of down, just so there's a little bit of variation. And then there's nothing different in the second half because I don't really think I have this playing like the whole time in the melody. It's more of just something that comes in and out gradually and you'll hear it and then not hear it. But yeah, here's what it sounds like. But that delay just sounds so cool, and like the sound is like just distorted enough where it's like pleasing to the ear, but not overly distorted where it would like sound bad. I don't know, it's just a good sound. And then for the final melodic sound besides the bass, I have the basser lead from the Adapt Serum Bank. Another really solid lead, has like kind of like a wobble detune to it almost, but it just plays this pattern that kind of contrasts the melody that's right here, so they kind of like bounce back and forth off of each other and just sound really nice. Yeah, but when I was making this, I had a lot of trouble like getting the timing right on these. Like you can see, like this isn't even on time technically, but it still sounds okay. There was something else I wanted to do in my head, but I just couldn't figure it out with the MIDI or clicking it in. But yeah, anyways, here's what it sounds like. and then that just repeats over with no variation in the second half. Alright, and then for the final sound, which is the bass, I use the Musk sub bass from the Money XO 2K Serum preset bank. But here's the MIDI for this. It just copies the bass notes like pretty much all of my other bass lines, but it's very simple. It's just a grid sound and it fills up that low end for the intro. So here's what it sounds like. And I did have gross beat on this on like a volume sidechain, but that got deleted because I only have the demo version of gross beat. And then for the arrangement, like always, just did it by ear. It just felt in my head where things would come in and out in the melody and just kind of structured it that way. But the only thing to kind of mention is I have this halftime here, slows it down a little bit in the intro, and then it speeds up as the halftime gradually decreases. And then again here, I just kind of wanted this to be like a slower, more empty part. Even though like all of these melodies are playing simultaneously, it still does feel a little bit more open than when you have the leads in the melody. And then of course I just added the one beat gate at the end with a little reverse to just kind of spice up where the drums would come in. So yeah, that's it for the melody, so here's what it sounds like all together. So overall, just a pretty decent hyperpop melody. Haven't made these in a while, so I was pretty happy with this one, so I figured I'd make a video on it. But anyways, now we can get started on the drums. Alright, so yeah, that's gonna be pretty much it for the video. I think the drums actually turned out pretty good. That's like a hi-hat pattern I wouldn't normally do. Normally I just go two-step and like just kind of stick with that, but I tried to do some triplet things in there, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, overall, that's it. But have a fantastic rest of your afternoon, evening. It's evening time, it's 8. But yeah, have a great rest of your evening. Here's the final beat.